There exists a wizard elephant who uses his magic of summoning dead spirits to uncover the ancient history of the multiverse itself. His name? Quintorius God. His end goal? Well, it's cracking open the biggest secret in the history of Magic the Gathering. And he's on the precipice of revealing the truth behind the multiverse itself through the Coin Empire, giant gray beasts on the edge of eternity, and the Eldrazi. It turns out that Quint here is way more powerful and more central to the future lore of Magic the Gathering than I have ever given him credit for, and what's even wilder is that he actually comes from unbelievably humble beginnings. So I say, let's start there and then work our way all the way to the crazy stuff. Quintorius God of War. Back when he was still a little Loxodon, aka Elephant Humanoids, Quint was being raised as the son of a poor shepherd on the plain of ARCAVIOS. Growing up as a nomad, he wandered, tending to their flock of sheep with his magical powers. Now, that's of course one way to keep them from straying from the path, but I've been told that a dog is just as good, it turns out. However, one day it was decided that he should attend school, and the school chosen was a military academy. Pretty insane choice because Quintorius is not exactly built for that. His deal is that he likes to uncover history, not make it on the battlefield, but despite his calm and kind demeanor, Quint isn't exactly a pushover either. Right from his childhood, he knew he had powerful magic and knew it was useful to avoid confrontation. So when he got hazed by a bunch of top recruits at that school, he made some banners fall, tied some random bootstrings, and tripped them into broken arms, concussions, and probably a few chipped teeth. Now, arguably the funniest bit of this is that this is exactly what is depicted on the Strixhaven print of Expel. It's literally just Quintorius getting kicked out of the Rundlestrom Military Academy for being unathletic and nice, but kicking everyone's butts with his magic nonetheless. How it reminds me of my own high school days. Can't I feel you? I feel you. Now, after all of this nonsense, he made his way over to Strixhaven University and joined the Lorehold College, which is the red and white mana faction founded by the head dragon Velomachus Lorehold, which focuses all on archaeomancy. Basically, they're all about archaeology, history, summoning ghosts, spirits, and ancient magic. So finally, Quint found his place and was about to set off to study the past, present, and future, but only because history, turns out, tends to repeat itself. Searching for Zantafar. So now we can kind of punch in on the struggling student Quint. Pretty sure he just had ADHD or something and some self-esteem issues, but that's all good because he's about to meet his assigned spirit mentor. Yeah, that's a thing here. And that is Asterion, who is not a vampire from Baldur's Gate 3, that's Astarion. Asterion, with an E, is a long-dead noble warrior whose statue resides on Effigy Row, where all of the Lorehold students summon historical figures to learn directly from them. Definitely not like the paintings from Harry Potter. Totally different because, it's statues. Now, on paper, this should be kind of perfect for Quint. He'll get to learn from a powerful legendary warrior, and that'll surely help him build his own confidence up. But in reality, it turns out to be an elephant-sized disaster. You see, Asterion is less proud hero and more I eat 5 meals a day at the 7-Eleven because there are unavoidably good deals on taquitos and wizard fingers type of guy. Instead of providing deep insights into ancient battles or lost civilizations, Asterion just keeps rambling endlessly about very trivial nonsense, food, fashion, etiquette, completely derailing Quint's entire goal of learning, well, pretty much anything. But turns out he did learn a ton about scones, like so much about scones, and that's gotta be worth something, I guess. At least makes good breakfast. Now, turns out that Wizards hasn't given us a ton of details here, yet at least, but in the story mentors that I'm pulling this from, they made sure I knew that Asterion actually, no kidding, loves scones. Anyways, just so you know. desperate to salvage something here, Quint turns to recorded history instead of, relying on Asterion directly, and so he starts researching Asterion's lineage, background, and disappearance, uncovering that Asterion has vanished near a place called Pillar Drop, a section of ruins that Lorehold is currently uncovering and where his statue was then eventually discovered. Not entirely sure how the dead become statues or if any statue of a dead guy can become a spirit, but that's kind of how it works. So long story short, young Mr. Kant here decided to ask him about that, and that didn't work at all. Homeboy Aster did not know what he was on about. He couldn't really remember anything clearly. All he had were broken fragments of an idea, concepts of a plan, if you would. And Quintorius learned the flaw with first-hand sources the hard way, which will make his essay really hard, probably, but the big turning point comes when Asterion asks Quint to take him to the site where his statue was originally found, which turns out immediately would break Strixhaven rules because the dean said that spirit statues are not allowed to leave Effigy Row where the statues are being kept. So Quint just refuses the request until Asterion calls him a coward. "Oh, little dweeb followed the rules, huh? Loser." But Quint said, "Nah man, I'll lose my job, it helps me with my tuition," and admittedly Asterion really respected that and pried on that instead. Then eventually, after discussing how Quint thought the school was actually built on the ruins of an ancient city called Morgatitsukesh, Asterion reveals that isn't anywhere near where the school is located, and that Pillar Drop was the site of an ancient Loxodon civilization called Zantafar. Essentially a mythic homeland tied to stories, poetry, and identity. It's actually believed to have been destroyed or hidden long ago, its people completely scattered, and Asterion recites a fragment of a poem to win Quint over, the Canticle of Jet, a poem taught and passed down by Loxodons. So at the very least, at this point, it became clear that Asterion actually knew surprisingly much about Loxodon culture. And Asterion knows that Zantafar is located at the same site that Quint is studying, and if Quint took him to the Pillar Drop to properly reveal it is Zantafar, then Quint will surely get a good grade, right? So Khan sneaks away with his mentor, I guess grabbing the statue under his arm, since they now have a civilization to discover. When they arrive near the excavation site, Quint nearly gets caught by Professor Hovry Ghostforge, one of the few figures in Quint's life who actually understands and supports him. And despite the offer to study, hang, and learn from the Ghostforge and the older students who were currently doing a late-night dig sesh, Quint made an excuse and just dipped. Eventually, Asterion leads Quint to a cave that he insists is the entrance to Zantafar, but when they arrive, it was nothing. No ruins, no markings, no city, dilly bupkis, nada, ain't no learning here. It's just rocks, and not the good kind, you know? So Quint, of course, lashed out at Asterion, who cut him off to accept all the slander. He called himself a disappointment, a buffoon, and a failure of a mentor. And so, at the very least, Asterion finally explains his past. Turns out that he was a noble raised in privilege, but cared for by a Loxodon named Viz, who acted as a mentor and guardian. Viz was then later accused of being a brutal mercenary known as the Butcher, sick name by the way, and executed publicly without a trial. Asterion's father upheld the law, even if it meant condemning an innocent dude. Now, was he innocent? Asterion actually had no idea, but he did know there was no evidence, no reason to execute him, but he was slaughtered like a butcher. Oh, anyway, what's that? Something else that needs to be slaughtered? It's the subscribe button! Wow, what a crazy unexpected call to action. Well, go ahead and help me out, slaughter that thing by clicking it, and who knows, maybe you will get more content from me in the future. Now back to the story. Ever the empath, Quintorius saw himself in Asterion and knew that he needed to keep trying to find Zantafar. Surely they had overlooked something here. And then he remembered the poem. The Canticle of Jet was a map. And if you're both a Ohara and a Manu Crypt fan, you will know that there is nothing in the world I love myself more than a poem or a song that's also full to the brim with secret messaging and lore. Descend the steps, O pilgrim, O wanderer. To find Zantafar, you must seek it. To seek Zantafar, you must embrace it. To embrace Zantafar, you must accept it. To accept Zantafar, you must know its heart. And after he led his little musical sideshow, which I spared you, I was thinking about singing it, but I think better not, everything revealed itself and they had actually found it. Zantafar. Inside, he finds an absolutely massive golden elephant, a giant statue to Jet himself, the great poet. But deeper down, he found an even more important discovery, a broken, dismantled body of a human, Asterian's real body. He did find Zantafar, he did succeed, he just died in the process. And at last, Quint gave him the chance to explore the city he had died hundreds of years ago trying to find. Strixhaven versus Phyrexia. After this first adventure, everything was pretty good in Booktown. Everyone was reading their books in the Biblioplex and they were researching projects. Hell, Liliana was teaching classes. Quint had befriended the Kenrith twins, and realistically, it was exactly what you'd expect a weird wizard college to kinda be like. Strixhaven was safe until the Phyrexians, these big, meaty and machiny beasts, started invading the multiverse, and ARCAVIOS, the plane that Strixhaven is on, was no exception. Liliana actually ordered several students, including Quint, to find a spell in the Biblioplex, the Invocation of the Founders. This spell would rewrite Strixhaven and the combined forces of these students as representatives of the very ideals of the Academy, and its sections could invoke it together. If they were successful, they would fix Strixhaven by removing the concept of the Phyrexians from it altogether, but things, as you might have realized at this point in the Magic story, don't always go as peachy keen as we'd all hope. The school barely held together, with most professors either captured or completed, and only Liliana Vess maintained a fragile defense above ground here. By the way, I really recommend here that you read March of the Machines Arcavios, A Radiant Heart, for all the crazy details on how Quint managed to get into the Biblioplex and find the invocation, because it's a doozy, especially with the little fights that they have on their way. Really fun read, not crazy relevant to the lore overall, but if you want to dive into it, go check that out. For the purposes of this video, which, we're really working our way to bigger stuff, eventually, the group of students led by Quint reaches the invocation itself. And after some tomfoolery, they finally start channeling the invocation. For a moment, it actually works. Woohoo! And then, a moment later, it all fails. A completed Dean Nasiri appeared to disrupt the ritual, targeting one of the other students, Rutha, breaking her concentration. She did not succeed on her constitution saving throw, it seems, but Quint was here to save the day. Without hesitation, he grabbed Rutha's portion of the spell and poured his own life force into it, balancing two roles in the same invocation. Energy erupted like a volcano, or even worse, two volcanoes, and in a flash, Quintorius was consumed by light, and then he vanished, dead in the blink of an eye. Alright, no, I lied, right? I mean, look at how much of the video is still left. He didn't die, and this is about the planeswalker Quintorius can't. That's right. In his desperate struggle to save all of Strixhaven, he unleashed his spark, officially becoming a planeswalker. Quintorius, Multiversal Archaeologist. So, our little big Loxodon is now able to finally travel the multiverse, and much like Tamio, all he can really do is research everything. The multiverse is his oyster, and he loves this oyster. So, in service of the Lorehold College, Quint began to research throughout many different planes. I mean, sure, he was technically a dropout, but he'll figure that out eventually. Consider this as a academic leave of absence, plus he was trying to still learn and bring more knowledge to the school, so I think that's pretty chill. In his quests, he began to uncover a very specific motive throughout many planes and their most ancient ruins. For some strange reason, it turns out that they all had the same coins. Seriously, across several planes in Magic, before the Omen Paths ever existed, somehow there was a connecting thread. Currency. This was a monumental discovery that Jace Beleren and Tamio actually also had discovered, but we aren't gonna talk about that. After all, Tamio's dead and Jace is, well, going to be covered in a different, much longer video. For now, Quint is crushing it, and his travels led him to one place specifically, Ixalan. Maybe they will hold the answers to this mysterious coin empire that Quint has started to uncover. The elephant who saved a world of dinosaurs with the power of studying really good. Ixalan at last. A new plane for me to talk about. It's kind of crazy how this hasn't come up yet. Ixalan is an ancient Aztec and South American inspired plane full of merfolk, vampires, pirates, and most importantly, I think, dinosaurs. If you're a lorehead and you've watched any of my videos before, you may know that the Immortal Sun, the powerful artifact that Nicol Bolas used during the War of the Spark, is originally from Ixalan, but what we need to talk about in this video is that somewhere deep in the heart of Ixalan, remnants of the Coin Empire have been discovered. So, Saheeli Rai, a former planeswalker and lover of Huatli, another former planeswalker and warrior of the Sun Empire, summoned Quintorius, the Beast Unleashed Kant, to Ixalan to investigate. Oh, go. Have a clue token, dear viewer. You get to investigate too. So, roughly a year after awakening his spark and the Phyrexian invasion, it turns out that our little studious boy had finally made a name for himself. Upon arriving, Benjamin Blümchen here is welcomed by Waita of the Sun Empire and brought to an ancient temple where he joins the Sun Warrior Huatli in solving a puzzle that then unlocks access to deep subterranean caverns. Now, as they descend, for which we're gonna have to put a cart into our graveyard, so give me back that clue token you got earlier, the group now discovers a hidden underground city here. Using his pretty crazy lorehold magic, Quint reanimates the spirit of a man named Abuelo, who becomes their guide throughout the ruins. Then they have to fight some Mysonids, fungus monsters, and River Heralds save them and bring them to a big old door that leads to the legendary core of Ixalan. Our homeboy Abuelo helps them get inside, and there they meet a full-on new civilization that is completely thriving. Actually, insane. They're called the Altex, and while diplomatic relations were forming, an ancient bat god, Alcazotz, escapes, causing all of the actual conflict of the set block caverns of Ixalan. Vampires start becoming demons, Aklatotz dips at some point, and Quint can finally get back to work. In the aftermath of this, Big Boy Quint remains with the Altex as they begin rebuilding all the demon bad vampire damage, and in return for his assistance, they guide him to a site known as Colony's End, a ruin left behind by an ancient invading force that once reached all the way to the core. The battlefield here is absolutely crazy, and Quint can't help but remember his adventure into the ruins of Zantafar with Asterion on his home plane. And Quint kind of struggles to fully understand what he really finds there. Everything is massive. Giant furniture, more coin motifs, and some massive empty glass tanks shattered as if something had been stolen from them or possibly broke out of them. Except for one. One of these massive tanks was still intact, and inside were the remains of a massive creature eerily similar to something he had previously encountered near the surface. A giant, gray-skinned creature with clawed hands. Then, it twitched its finger and Quint just skedaddled. He just up and dipped the moment the creature formed a fist and thus hand vanished into the multiverse. Surely that's gonna be okay, nothing bad coming of that. The Coin Empire is on ARCAVIOS? And now we venture into the story of Secrets of Strixhaven. It basically picks up pretty soon after Can finishes his adventures on Ixalan, and he finally makes his way back to Strixhaven. He reunites with his old dean, Augusta Tullis, who is dead but is teaching as a ghost after the Phyrexian invasion. Clutch academic right there, I would say. And so Quint informs her of his studies and how it's unbelievably bizarre that the Coin Empire vanished essentially overnight. Fearing, of course, that one day it could return just as quickly as it had left. Especially after seeing what appears to be a living member of this invasion force that the Altex have described. So to investigate this a little bit further, Quint pushes to join an expedition to the Fields of Strife, one of the most dangerous locations on ARCAVIOS, and a place that is being studied by the Lorehold students. Now, how do I describe this best? This place is essentially a battlefield frozen in time where the spirits of ancient warriors endlessly relive their deaths. You know, nice stuff, not bizarre. It's both a historical goldmine and a psychological nightmare at the same time. And then, in arguably my favorite sassy Quint moment, after Augusta denies him this, Quint threatens to go to the Tolarian Academy on Dominaria instead, since surely they'd take him in and be more interested in funding his own research. What a sassy flex, and it kind of convinces Tullis to let him join as a teaching assistant because the battlefield is very dangerous and the teachers are protected by Strixhaven's protection spells. Just so you know, it's not just like a place he could have just casually strolled to on his own. Now, once he's in, he ventures past the protected zones into deeper territory where the ghosts of the battlefield are stronger and a lot more aggressive. As he keeps exploring, he uses his Lorehold magic to experience the memories of the dead firsthand, diving into their final moments. And well, what can I say? It's pretty rough. That's not a fun thing to experience over and over a bunch, but Quint still keeps going anyway because he knows he's very close to something. Eventually, Quint crosses a forbidden boundary and gets pulled into an especially powerful memory. Inside it, he sees visions of a much bigger conflict than he'd ever expected. Massive gray figures like he'd seen in the core of Ixalan, unfamiliar shapes, something that doesn't quite belong to ARCAVIOS, something bigger than he can even begin to comprehend. He rips himself back to consciousness and accidentally falls into a hidden chamber underground, a cache of insane loot and lore there. To prove his findings, he grabs a knife that he'd already disturbed and rushes to grab more researchers. Tullis grants him a geomancer, Mika, and the two head back to the cache, but it's currently being looted by a treasure hunter named Stella Lee from Thunder Junction. Yeah. So wait, it's a classic Indiana Jones battle suddenly. Looter versus historian. Let's go. Now apparently there was an Omen Path tunnel, a remnant of the Phyrexian invasion, that allowed interplanar travel straight into this cache. Quint and Stella do battle, no one wins, and she just dips, leaving Quint to find Mika, who has found fossilized footprints with big claws, the same exact prints of the creature that Quint found in that container of Ixalan. Turns out the Coin Empire was here at some point, and that's not all. Above them was the smoking gun, the piece of the big puzzle that Quint had been so desperate and eager to find, but maybe a little bit distraught after uncovering the harsh reality of the cosmos. A large tiled mosaic of an armored creature with a lance in one hand who was clashing with a tentacled horror from beyond the realms of imagination itself. Quint, just as you should be, was very familiar with that beast. He'd seen such things before, in the Biblioplex. There were terrors that existed outside the blind eternities, waiting to feast on entire planes. What are these avatar things, and will they finally be revealed in Reality Fracture? I sure hope so. It kind of feels like that's the setup here, but my biggest question is, are they the Eldrazi? Like, my gut is telling me that the creatures that Quint discovered are, like, familiar with them, but what, like they clashed with the Coin Empire? That's kinda nuts, and I do feel like they may finally make their return very soon, so if you want to learn all about the Eldrazi, check out this video right here where I explain everything about them. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching. We're gonna get a lot more lore, I think, coming soon with Strixhaven and then the upcoming set, hopefully, especially Reality Fracture. So, I hope this was useful. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you in the next video. Töre.